Hey guys, this is another useful video from GAN Scholar for PMP warriors. I'm pretty sure you don't need an introduction to the PMP mindset. In this video, I'm going to present 28 key PMP exam mindset tips that can be a game changer. This is the most comprehensive video on the PMP exam mindset packed with insights. Before we start, let me quickly explain how this video is structured. I will explain each mindset, and right after that, you will see a question that you can solve using what you just learned. You can pause the video, try solving the question, and then resume to see the answer. So, let's get started. The first mindset is be a good human. Be nice and kind to everyone and everything, including your team members, stakeholders, vendors, and even the environment. This is one of the most underrated yet most important PMP exam mindset. To help you better understand this mindset, let's look at some contrasting behaviors that a project manager should neither demonstrate nor tolerate. These include being rude, hostile, impolite, or disrespectful, failing to value people, lacking empathy, ignoring morals, ethics, and values, exploiting company resources for personal gain, or acting with selfish intent. Such behaviors are unacceptable for a project manager, even if they come from powerful stakeholders like the sponsor or customer. Kindness and empathy form the foundation of all human interaction, and project management is no exception. When taking the PMP exam, approach each question with this mindset. Never choose an option that can cause harm directly or indirectly or show lack of empathy. Let me give you a couple of examples. Imagine one of your team members is underperforming and you need to give feedback. A good project manager would do this privately through one on one conversation, not in front of others, as public criticism could damage the person's image and self esteem. In another case, suppose a team member requests time off to care for a sick parent, even though the project is facing tight deadline. A compassionate PM would talk to the team member, explore alternatives, and make the necessary arrangements to support the team. If you come across an exam option that ignores empathy and focus only on meeting deadlines, it's a wrong choice. Avoid it at all costs. Always treat people with dignity, empathy, and integrity even when the pressure is high and deadlines are looming. This is not just important for real project management, but also for the PMP exam. The exam tests more just your knowledge of project management processes, it evaluates your character and your ability to lead with compassion. If you don't demonstrate this mindset, there are good chances you wouldn't pass the PMP exam. Trust me. The next mindset is servant leadership. There has been a significant paradigm shift in how we lead people over the last decade. In the early times, managers tend to be more directive. They give instructions and we simply followed them. But as we evolve, so has the nature of the projects we undertake. Most are now knowledge based. For example, software development, running a marketing campaign, conducting space research, or developing a vaccine. All these projects heavily rely on expertise of team members doing the work. When people feel undervalued or unsupported, they are likely to disengage, underperform, or leave the organization altogether. That's why the era of traditional top down management is behind us. So, what's the alternative? Embrace servant leadership. Servant leadership is often compared to gardening. When you care for a plant, you don't force it to bear fruits and flowers. Instead, you nurture it. You provide sunlight, water, fertilizer, and protect it from pests. Similarly, managing a project team requires creating an environment where people can thrive. As project managers, we should focus on the well being of our team members. This means addressing their concerns, removing roadblocks, coaching, upskilling, offering psychological safe workplace, facilitating rather than directing, and empowering them to make decisions. When these needs are met, people feel motivated, valued, and capable. And when you have such a team, high performance is a natural outcome. That's the essence of servant leadership. The formula is simple: take care of your people, and they will take care of your project. You don't need to push for KPIs. A well supported team will naturally deliver on them. While servant leadership is most commonly associated with agile project management, there's nothing wrong with applying it in predictive environment too. In PMP exam, you will encounter around 74 questions from the people domain, and all of them assume a servant leadership mindset. Failing to adapt this perspective could lead to incorrect answers. The next mindset is don't jump straight to the hero option. In PMP exam, if you see any problem presented in the question, there will be an option that will solve the problem. Please don't choose the option that would solve the problem right away, especially if the question ends, what would you do next or immediate step? I call these type of options as hero option. Instead, look for option that talks about what immediate next step you should take. We naturally gravitate towards the hero option. Please resist this temptation. In the PMP world, you are not expected to be a superhero. You are expected to be a process driven professional project manager. So, when something goes wrong, say a conflict, a risk, a defect, a missing resource, your first move is not to solve the entire problem. This mindset is all about sequencing. Don't jump to step 6. Do step 1, the next immediate correct action in the PMI framework. Let me give an example. Let's say a client suddenly requests a major change during execution. You don't say, okay, we will implement it tonight. Instead, you document the change request, perform impact analysis, identify options, present it to the change control board. Only then you move forward. How this helps in the PMP exam? PMP will test your ability to resist action bias, the urge to instantly fix. If a question presents a conflict, issue, or change, and one of the options says log the issue, notifies the stakeholder, update the risk register, perform analysis first, that's usually your answer. Avoid jumping to implement solution or make decision if the process hasn't been followed yet. I hope you're clear with this mindset. Now let's talk about the fourth mindset. The fourth mindset is compliance, regulatory norms, standards, and processes. Compliance means, as a project manager, you are not just delivering results, you are delivering them ethically, legally, within organizational and industry rules. Think about regulatory requirements, safety standards, data protection laws, internal company policies, PMI code of ethics, etc. This mindset says before you push forward with your plan, stop and ask, are we allowed to do this? Are we doing it in the right way? Why this is important in the project management? Because non-compliance is equal to massive risk. It can lead to fines and legal actions, project shutdowns, loss of trust and reputation, audit failures, and just getting fired. Even if a decision seems smart, technically or financially, if it violates a law, standard, or policy, it's a hard no. Your job isn't just to deliver results, it is to deliver legitimate results. Let me give an example. Let's say you are running an IT project that collects user data. Your team wants to log IP addresses and location data to improve user experience. Seems helpful, right? But wait, are you compliant with GDPR data protection law? Have you informed users, gotten consent? Before implementing anything, you check the legal requirements, align with your company's privacy policy, get approval from the compliance legal team. This is important. Now, how this helps in PMP exam? This mindset shows up in tons of exam questions, especially in risk, quality, procurement, and stakeholder areas. You'll often see choices where one option looks efficient or decisive, but another option aligns with compliance, like refer to the legal or compliance department, check regulatory standards, pass the project until policy review is done, update policies to align with industry standards. That's your answer. PMI doesn't reward rogue moves, even if they look productive. They reward integrity plus process. I hope you're clear with this mindset. Let's move on and learn about the fifth mindset. The fifth mindset is don't shy away from your responsibility. When you are the project manager, you are not just managing tasks, you are the captain of the ship. That means you own both the wins and the problems. You don't dodge tough calls, you don't push blames to the team, and you definitely don't say, "This is not my job." This is all about accountability and leadership. We may want to see a leader, not a finger pointer. Just escalating everything to the sponsor or steering committees is not leadership. Yes, escalation is acceptable and sometimes necessary. If a problem is beyond your authority and has a high impact, you should escalate it to the sponsor, program manager, or PMO for resolution. However, these are special cases. Most of the times, a project manager is expected to resolve issues. You cannot escalate everything, point fingers, or blame others if your decision creates new problems. Take ownership and escalate only when truly needed. Escalation is not a default strategy, it's a last resort. When your influence and authority are exhausted, you can apply escalation. I hope you are clear with this mindset. Let's talk about the next mindset. The next mindset is inclusive leadership. Facilitate, don't dictate. Inclusive leadership means you don't give directions and expect blind execution. Instead, you include your team in decision making, promote self organizing behavior, and act more like a facilitator rather than a commander. Think of yourself like a host of a great brainstorming session. You guide, create space, keep things moving, but you don't dominate. Let's say you are managing a construction project and anticipate that rain could disrupt the work. Instead of planning a risk response alone, you can bring team together for a brainstorming session. Together you explore options and come up with a strong cost-effective solution. Why does this work? Because it taps into collective wisdom. Your team brings diverse perspectives that goes beyond your own expertise and biases. Involving the team in decision making builds ownership and trust. When they help create the risk response, they are more committed to implement it. That's the difference between giving orders and practicing inclusive leadership. It's all about better decision making, teamwork, trust, and promoting ownership. So always prefer options which are in favor of inclusive leadership. I hope you're clear with this mindset. Now let's talk about the seventh mindset. Don't be bossy. The next mindset is don't be bossy. Avoid using power or authority often. Yes, project managers do have authority over their team members, but they don't rely on it too often. Overusing authority makes you appear authoritarian, which is the opposite of being a good servant leader. Command and control leadership discourages openness, innovation, and collaboration. Team members may stop sharing ideas or taking initiative due to fear of criticism or failure, none of which helps project success. Instead of forcing compliance, use soft skills to influence, coach, mentor, and facilitate. When people feel respected and involved, they are naturally more committed and motivated. They will follow your lead not out of fear but out of trust and admiration. Let's say there are rare situations where authority is justified. For example, if two team members are in a conflict that escalates and affecting the project, you might need to step in decisively and impose a resolution for the good of the team. In PMP exam, if an option involves using authority, think carefully. Is it the situation seriously enough to warrant it? Authority should be a last resort, not your default approach. How this helps in PMP exam? This mindset helps you filter out command and control choices in the exam questions. Avoid options like enforce compliance immediately, warn the team members of consequences, issue a directive. Favor choices that involves facilitating discussions, building consensus, understanding perspectives, leading through collaboration. PMI wants to see your soft skills. I hope you're clear with this mindset. The next mindset we're going to talk about is goals and objectives aren't just performance metrics, they align vision. Too many people treat goals and objectives like checkboxes or KPIs, things to measure performance, judge output, or set bonuses. But in the world of project management, PMI wants you to shift that thinking. Goals and objectives aren't just about did you do your job? They are about are we all rowing in the same direction? Think of them as a compass, not a report card. The real power lies in creating alignment, shared purpose, and collective ownership. How this helps in the PMP exam: when you see questions involving confused team members, misaligned priorities, stakeholder dissatisfaction, siloed behaviors, look for options where PM brings people back to the project vision, business goals, or strategic alignment, not hard performance metrics. Avoid choices like enforce project KPIs, remind the team of their deliverables. You have to look for options like realign the team with project objectives, reinforce the value and purpose behind the work, facilitate a session to review the business case or benefits. So, next time you see a question with goals and objectives in it, don't just view them as performance measurement tools. They are also useful for creating alignment. I hope you're clear with this mindset. Now, let's talk about the next mindset: be proactive, don't be reactive. Prevention is better than cure. A project manager is expected to manage uncertainties and issues proactively to ensure overall project efficiency. This is precisely why risk management is essential. In risk management, we anticipate potential threats and opportunities that could impact the project later, and we proactively create appropriate risk responses. This approach is far more efficient as it saves time, money, and resources compared to dealing with issues after they occur. For example, consider the risk of ransomware targeting your computer. Would you wait until it affected and pay hacker to recover your data, or would you regularly back up your data and install reliable, up-to-date security software with a firewall? The proactive approach is clearly better. It's less costly and more effective. Recovering data after an attack is reactive. It's firefighting. And the exam always choose options that reflect a proactive mindset over a reactive one. I hope you're clear with this mindset. The next mindset is when there's a problem, inform the stakeholders before solving it. I know what you might be thinking. Shouldn't I try to fix it first? Why involve others immediately? Good question. In project management, transparency is key. If there is a problem, big or small, the stakeholders need to know about them because they need to be kept in the loop to adjust expectations, offer input or support, and avoid being blindsided later. In real life or in the PMP exam, informing doesn't mean escalating. It means keeping the right people aware so they can engage with the solution if needed. For example, imagine you are managing a construction project and doing the excavation work. Midway through the task, one excavator breaks down. What would you do now? Naturally, as a project manager, you would want to fix the broken machine or arrange for a replacement, isn't it? Well, that's necessary. In the exam, if you see an option like inform the stakeholders, that's usually the correct choice. Not solve the problem or find the root cause of the problem. You might think, how can I inform stakeholders without knowing the root cause? But root cause analysis can take anywhere from an hour to a week. The key is first inform the stakeholders that there is an issue and that you are working on it. Then investigate, identify the cause, and implement the temporary or permanent fix. Choosing to inform stakeholders shows transparency and build trust. They may even offer help that speeds up resolution. So remember, when there is an issue, the first step is not firefighting, it's communication. Keep your stakeholders in the loop, build confidence through transparency, PMI values collaboration, communication, and process driven behaviors. So, on the exam, if inform the stakeholder is an option, it's most likely the right one. Eliminate it only if you have a strong reason. The next mindset is risk is about the future, issue is about the present, and change is about the past. Sounds like a timeline, right? It actually is. And that's a game changer on the exam. Let me break it down for you in a way that sticks. When I took my PMP exam, I noticed something important. Before the exam, a friend who already taken it warned me that many questions were related to issue management, and he kept selecting update the issue log as the answer. I didn't understand why until I experienced it myself. I realized I had missed a key exam strategy during my exam preparation, something not highlighted in any exam prep books. PM often test your understanding of the interdependency between risk, issue, and change management. Here is the concept. Risk is about future uncertainties. If you identify a potential problem earlier, you can handle it proactively. Issue is about a problem that is currently happening, something that wasn't managed as a risk. Change is about modifying something already created or approved in the past. For example, if you have to perform rework to fix an issue, you need additional time, resources, and money. This means updating the project plan and raising a change request. And if you could have proactively identified this issue, you could have managed it as a risk. In short, risk is about the future, issue is about the present, and change is about the past. This understanding helped me a lot, and as a PMP trainer, I now emphasize it heavily in my training sessions. If you don't grasp this interdependency, you will likely get many exam questions wrong. Let me give you a scenario. Your project is behind schedule. This is an issue. To fix it, you decided to fast track, which requires more resources and increases cost. To update your cost baseline, you must raise a change request. But if you had identified the risk earlier, example, uh, late raw material delivery, you could have planned for it and avoided the issue entirely. This example shows how issues triggered changes and how proper risk management could have prevented both. In the exam, always analyze whether a scenario is about risk, issue, or change management. Look for clues. If you miss this, you could easily lose 5 to 8 marks. Most training programs don't teach this mindset, but it's critical to scoring well. The next mindset is identify whether the question is from which development approach, whether it's from predictive, agile, or hybrid. In the past, the PMP exam was relatively easier because it included only questions from predictive, that is, waterfall approach. However, since the end of 2021, agile has been added to the syllabus. As a result, you now also get questions from hybrid approaches, which combines agile and predictive methods. This addition has significantly increased the complexity of the PMP exam, making it much more challenging. To tackle this challenge, the first step before solving any question is to identify whether it is based on predictive or agile methodology. I will talk more about hybrid shortly. For now, let's just focus on agile versus predictive. About 50% of the questions in the exam come from agile, and the remaining 50% come from predictive. If you don't adapt this mindset, you are most likely to misinterpret many questions. There is a key strategy you can use to identify the development approach a question is based on. Pay close attention to keywords. Please refer to the table I have provided. Certain keywords are associated specifically with predictive and others with agile. By noticing these keywords, you can quickly figure out the context of the question. PMI intentionally includes such clues in the question to guide you towards the correct approach. For example, keywords like change control board, work breakdown structure, scope baseline, project management plan, Gantt chart, critical path, These are all exclusive to Predictive. On the other hand, keywords such as retrospectives, user stories, Scrum Master, product owner, time boxed iterations, velocity, product backlog refinement, minimum viable product, Kanban board clearly point to Agile. You can take a snapshot of this table and keep it handy, but with proper preparation, you will naturally recognize these keywords and be able to classify each question correctly. Now, what about hybrid? Honestly, there is no such thing as single hybrid development approach. It's not a blend where agile and predictive are merged into one process. Instead, in hybrid projects, some parts are executed using predictive method and other parts are done using agile depending on the nature of the work. Let me use a metaphor here. Think of predictive as white and agile as black. In hybrid, some parts of the projects are white and some are black, but we don't mix them to create gray. At the lowest level, every piece of work is either agile or predictive, not a blend of both. This means you cannot mix velocity with critical path, definition of done with acceptance criteria from the scope baseline, user stories with work packages for the same deliverable. So, when a question mentions hybrid, you have extra work to do. You need to decide whether to treat that particular situation using agile or predictive. The keywords will guide you. If you pay close attention to the language used, you will be able to classify the question correctly and approach it with the right mindset. Once you identify the development approach, it becomes easier to eliminate incorrect options and choose the right answer with confidence. The next mindset is identify whether the project is in planning or execution before solving the question. Before solving a question, first try to identify whether the project is in the planning stage or the execution stage. This applies to both predictive and agile projects. You might wonder, how is this applicable in agile? Well, even in agile, every iteration sprint includes its own planning phase, typically conducted on the first day of the sprint. Once sprint planning is completed, sprint execution begins. So, before solving a question, take a moment to understand the context. Is a question set in the planning phase or the execution phase? This understanding is critical because how you approach problems and make decisions will vary entirely depends on the phase. Let's take an example from predictive development approach. Let's say you are preparing the project schedule and it needs to be baseline. At this stage, stakeholders ask you to compress a schedule to complete the project earlier. If you recommend fast tracking, that's acceptable. Now, if you do this during execution, the cost baseline would already be set and you would have to follow the change management process to update it. But if you are still in planning, the cost baseline has not yet been established. So you don't need a formal change request here. You can simply adjust the project plan components. So remember, during planning, you can make changes without going through change control. During execution, any changes to baseline components require the change management process. If you assume the project is in execution, when it's actually in planning or vice versa, you will likely select the wrong answer. Don't make that mistake. I want to give an example from Agile as well. During sprint planning, if team members ask to modify the sprint goals assigned to them, it's completely acceptable. That's the right time to make those changes. However, once the sprint is in execution, changing the sprint goal is strongly discouraged. It disrupts focus and team commitment, and it's very hard to justify such changes mid sprint. This mindset passing to identify whether the project is in planning or execution will not only help you to take the right decision when answering, but also help you eliminate invalid options. Because your action as a project manager change completely based on this one detail. The next mindset is don't do anything that will harm teamwork. Fostering teamwork is one of the most important aspects of project team management. As a project manager, you should do everything you can to promote teamwork and avoid anything that could damage team bonding. But why this is so important? There is a model called Tuckman ladder model developed by Bruce Tuckman. It explains the stages of team formation: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Your ultimate goal is to take your team to the performing stage. This is the stage where the team works together like a well organized unit. They demonstrate strong collaboration, deliver high performance, and that results in better project productivity. But it's not easy to get there. The team has to go through struggles and adjustment to reach the performing stage. And as a project manager, your job is to support them in every way by setting team goals, promoting open communication, encouraging team bonding, organizing team building activities, managing conflicts effectively using your interpersonal skills. Reaching the performing stage is the first challenge. The second challenge is making sure the team stays there. Certain actions can damage team bonding and push the team back to early stages like storming or norming. This is something you must avoid. For example, setting individual goals instead of team goals, not empowering the team members to make decisions, excluding them from decision making, celebrating only individual accomplishment, overruling the team, ignoring conflict, dismissing someone's idea, or micromanaging the team. These are all things that can harm team dynamics. In PMP exam, some questions will test whether you're doing what it takes to keep your team functioning as a strong unit, or if you are doing something that could weaken teamwork. Never choose an option that directly or indirectly harms team bonding. This mindset will also help you eliminate the wrong answer choices. The next mindset is identify the seed or seeds on which the question is built. You might be wondering, what are seeds? I know. Let me explain it to you. To create any scenario based questions, specifically for PMP exam where you need to solve around 180 such questions, the question setters need a method to build these questions. You cannot just simply randomly imagine a situation and form a question. There is a structure to it, and I will teach you how these questions are actually set. It all starts with a knowledge bite. This knowledge bite is then embedded into a scenario or used to frame one. The goal is to test whether the exam taker is familiar with that knowledge bite. If someone has a good understanding of project management concepts, they will be able to figure out what the question is really asking and solve it with confidence. Let me show you with an example. Can you solve this question? Pause the video now, give it a try, and then resume. Done? Great. Now let's figure out which seed this question is based on. Let's refer to the PMBOK guide and go to the Skill Management Knowledge area, page number 210. This paragraph is rich in seeds. Now let's pick this knowledge byte from here. Schedule networks may have multiple critical paths. Next, let's go to page number 227 and pick this one. Evaluating the progress of activities on near critical paths can identify schedule risk. Now let's convert these seeds into a scenario based question. In fact, the question you just solved was based on these seeds. Can you now see the seeds embedded in it? Yes, great. And once you recognize the seed, wasn't it much easier to solve? Of course. Here's the point: every question on the exam is based on one or more seeds. So the best way to solve the question is to first figure out which seed or seeds it is based on. Once you do that, answering becomes much easier. I hope that's clear now. Once your eyes are trained to identify seeds, you cannot unsee them. It becomes second nature and it will help you solve questions much faster. So, while preparing, whether you are watching videos or reading topics, make sure to take notes of these seeds. Keep them handy for quick revision before the exam. If you can spot the seed, you can spot the right answer. If you find this video helpful, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. The next mindset is Identify the question type and solve it accordingly. Because not all questions are built the same way, and your approach shouldn't be either. As project managers, we should adjust how we respond based on the situation. Someone asks, what should we do next? That's future focused. Someone asks, what should we have avoided? That's backward looking. The same logic applies in the PMP exam. Each question type carries a unique intention, and if you don't recognize it, you will misread the entire situation. In my assessment, there are 11 types of questions. They are next, prevent, avoid, solve, expect or not, critical thinking, intertwine, ITTO or process flow, and more than one option seems to be correct, verdict questions, ethics, and math questions. There are ways to identify the question types and unique strategies to solve them. We won't be able to discuss them here. I have a dedicated video for this. Please check the video link in the description. Why this mindset is important? PMP isn't just about knowledge, it's about contextual application. If you misread the question type, you will apply the wrong mindset and choose the wrong answer. So slow down, scan the question structure, and know what it's asking. I hope you're clear with this mindset. It's the most important mindset of all. The next mindset is avoid pampering. Let the team try, fail, and learn. Too much of anything is no good. Earlier, we discussed the mindset of avoiding an authoritative approach. Don't always give directions. But on the other side of the spectrum, you also need to avoid overdoing care or pampering. Facilitate, don't pamper. If you imagine a taking care spectrum, the leftmost extreme is the authoritarian style, and the rightmost extreme is pampering. In the middle, we have facilitation. Stay in the middle. Pampering will make your team members weak. They won't be able to think critically or face challenges. We also need to build resilience. For examples, if there is a conflict between two team members, let them try to sort it out on their own. If you jump in immediately and resolve the conflict for them, that's over pampering. When you do this, they will never learn how to resolve conflicts on their own. Eventually, for every little disagreement, they will run to you. You're literally turning your team into a group of spoiled kids, and you won't want that. They should try to resolve conflict on their own first. If they cannot, then they can come to you and you can assist them. Over pampering kills ownership, prevents development of resilience and accountability, and makes the team overly dependent on you. So always go with the option that says, try it out, it's okay to fail, I'm here to support you. Create a team environment that offers psychological safety. People shouldn't fear failure. That way, they can experiment and explore innovative solutions. That's what you need to do. Great project managers don't prevent failure, they create safe zones for it. So, next time, if you see an option in the exam that seems pampering in nature, it might look attractive, but don't get tricked. Be careful, or you will end up making a mistake. The next mindset is choose the right decision making technique. For the PMP exam, you need to learn about three types of decision making techniques: consensus driven, autocratic, and data driven decision making. The challenge here is knowing when to use each technique. In the exam, you will see many questions testing whether you can make the right decision as a project manager. For that, you need to understand which technique fits the situation. All the techniques are useful, but only when applied in the right context. With this one mindset, you will be able to solve many PMP exam questions correctly. Let me explain when to use each decision making technique. Use consensus driven decision making when the collective wisdom of the stakeholders and team members is essential. Some decisions need to be examined from different perspectives and viewpoints. In such cases, choose consensus driven decision making. It also helps gain buy in from stakeholders and promote transparency and trust. Voting techniques falls under this type. Most of the times, If you are unsure what to choose, consensus driven is a safe and preferred approach. Use autocratic decision making when an individual must make the decision on behalf of the team. This is usually when consensus doesn't work. For example, if you want to modify the scope, you must check with the customer. If you need to increase the budget, the sponsor has to approve. If you are seeking regulatory approvals for a product, the authority must decide. Just because many people agree with something doesn't make it correct. Autocratic decision making is also suitable when a time critical and urgent decision is needed and there is no time for collaboration or voting. The person making the decision must have the authority and be held accountable. Use data driven decision making when you have facts, numbers, and data. This type avoids influence from individuals or group psychology. It helps make unbiased decision. For example, if you are deciding whether to change jobs, you won't just take a vote or ask friends. You will look at data, isn't it? Like growth opportunities, salary, learning, work culture, long term benefits, and so on. When you need to weigh multiple criteria or data points, go for data driven decision making. Multi criteria decision analysis is one example of this technique. So, next time you get a question that asks you to make a decision, investigate the options carefully, identify which one best matches the right decision making technique for the situation, and choose that. The next mindset is how to differentiate between communication management questions and stakeholder engagement questions. Stakeholder engagement and communication management are two critical knowledge areas for the exam, and they often overlap and interact. The real challenge lies in identifying whether a question is testing your understanding of communication management or stakeholder engagement, because they can appear very similar. If you don't recognize the difference before answering, you might end up choosing the wrong option. So, how do you tell whether a question is about communication or stakeholder engagement? It's easier than you think. The communication management plan is about what information is shared, with whom, by whom, when, and how it is communicated. Example: assume you conduct a weekly status meeting every Friday with key stakeholders. This meeting will be held face to face. During the meeting, the project manager will present key project updates, including EVM metrics, the open point list, and project risk exposure details. But why do we have this meeting? It's to promote transparency, trust, and awareness among the stakeholders. I hope that makes sense. In fact, if you take any communication activity, there is usually an emotional element attached to it. Please take a look at the table. On the left hand side, you will see typical project management communication activities. And on the right hand side, the emotional impact they have on the stakeholder community. The what, when, how, by whom, to whom aspects belongs to communication management, but the why behind communication is about stakeholder engagement. So, if you come across a question in the exam and if you are unsure whether it belongs to stakeholder engagement or communication management, ask yourself, is a question focused on what, when, how, or method of communication? If yes, it's about communication management. If it's about the purpose or emotional effect of communication, it's related to stakeholder engagement. This approach will help you identify the correct knowledge area and answer the question appropriately. The why behind your communication is what truly connects people to the project. As a PM, you are not just a messenger, you are a translator of impact. That's why communication and stakeholder engagement must work hand in hand. So now you know how to differentiate questions from communication, management, and stakeholder engagement. Yes. The next mindset we're going to talk about is organizational change should be deployed through compassionate mentoring, not force. This mindset is closely related to deploying change, and in the exam, we have topics called organizational change management. This is about how the project manager help the organization implement changes that are crucial for business transformation. These changes could involve a new process, a tool, or even a behavioral shift. For example, your company might adapt a new artifact management software. As a project manager, you may be tasked with deploying this change within your project. However, your team members might feel uncomfortable using or migrating to this new software. Still, not adapting the new system could negatively affect both the business and the project in the long term. The key issue here is mindset. Change always brings a certain level of discomfort to the people going through it, but we must accept that change is ultimately for the better. It moves us towards an envisioned future state, and that future state is almost always better than where we are now. As a PM leading an organization level change, you must act as a change catalyst, encouraging people to support the change. Importantly, you should not use authority or force compliance, as this will likely result in resistance, lack of buy in from team members, and eventually failure of the change initiative in the long term. You will encounter many exam questions rooted in this mindset, whether it's introducing a new agile approach, reorganizing teams, or replacing a decade old legacy system. Whenever you are asked to deploy these kinds of changes, the correct approach is through compassionate mentoring, patience, and empathy. So, whenever you are expected to drive cultural change or introduce a new method or approach in a project, and the exam question asks, what should you do? Always choose the option that focus on collaboration, engaging with people, understanding their concerns, coaching, and facilitating a smooth transition. Allow room for small failures and learning along the way. Let the adaptation happen in cycles, not as an overnight shift. Avoid options in the exam that involve enforcing rules, escalating resistance, or ignoring feedback. These are red flags and should not be selected. The next mindset is never say no to scope change right away. First, consider the request. If you ask the question, why do we do projects? Some might say it's to achieve intangible and tangible benefits for business success and sustainability. Others might say it's for a social cost like making the environment greener or making vaccines more affordable. Well, these are actually byproducts of doing a project. The core purpose of a project is to deliver what your customer and stakeholders need, period. The scope of a project refers to what we have agreed to deliver. In project following predictive development approach, we are usually able to define the project scope fairly well before execution begins. On the other hand, in agile or adaptive projects, the scope evolves over time and is expected to change frequently. However, in both cases, scope changes do happen during project execution. The degree and frequency of these changes may vary depends on the approach. For example, in predictive projects, because the scope is defined upfront, there may be fewer changes, but even there, changes can and should happen when required. Being open to scope changes is essential. Changes should be considered and accepted if they are justified by business needs or customer requirements. If you resist all scope changes, without valid reasons, you risk delivering something that customer doesn't actually need, which may lead to project failure or customer dissatisfaction. So whenever you receive a scope change request, do not reject it outright. Instead, first evaluate the request. Does it align with the business goals? Will it help the customer to get what they actually need? Does it add value to the final product or deliverables? If the customer is willing to provide additional time or budget, was this something we missed during the initial scope definition process? Yes. Sometimes we do need to say no to a scope change, especially if it leads to a scope creep or qualifies as gold plating. But that decision should come after a proper evaluation. Rejecting a scope change request without proper analysis is bad project management. It also damages stakeholder trust and affects how they perceive your ability to manage their expectations. So, in the exam, if you see a question where the client wants to modify the scope, whether in predictive or agile projects, do not outright reject the request, even if it comes at the last minute, like during the project closure. Always consider the request, evaluate whether it's valid or beneficial. If valid, proceed with the implementation. If not, discuss with the client and explain why it cannot be done. Also, never choose an exam option that says to implement the change immediately without evaluation. Evaluation is the first and most important step. I hope you're clear with this mindset. The next mindset we're going to discuss is inform, notify, escalate, discuss, share, or different actions. Most of us used to infer action words like inform, notify, escalate, discuss, and share synonymous. Yes, they are to some extent. But you know what? This is a dangerous mindset when it comes to PMP exam. Why? Because we are dealing with scenario based questions, and so understanding the context of the scenario is so important. Words like inform, notify, escalate, discuss, share are the ones which will help us to understand the context, the intensity level, and the intention of the PM or the other stakeholders more precisely. So, next time when you see these words in the exam, investigate them very carefully and thoroughly because they will help you understand the intensity of the scenario and what should be the next course of action you must take. And this will help you pick the right option and solve the question correctly. Please look at the table. You can understand how critical these words are and how they are different from each other. I've arranged the words based on their intensity level from low to very high. Please look at the purpose column. What does you understand the application of these words? Remember the intensity and application of these words to infer the scenario more precisely and pick the correct answer effortlessly. Trust me, you are going to get many questions right by knowing this mindset. Inform, notify, share, discuss, and escalate are not just semantics. They reflect the intensity and urgency of the situation and indicate how deeply a stakeholder needs to be involved. The next mindset is pay attention to time related keywords. Next, immediately, later, urgently, and soon. In the PMP exam, question words like next, immediately, later, soon, and urgently are not just filler words. They offer important contextual clues that help us understand the situation more deeply. These words reveal the timing, priority, or urgency involved and guide us in interpreting whether the project manager is making a mistake, reacting appropriately, or needs to take immediate action. Understanding the implication of these time related cues is critical to selecting the correct answer. Let's look at some scenario based examples to see how each word can influence the interpretation. Scenario 1, immediate. There is a major escalation email from the customer. The project manager immediately respond to the situation without consulting the team, as the issue need to be resolved within strict time constraints. Mindset insight. The word immediately implies urgency, but if the PM acted without analysis or team consultation, it could be a poor decision unless timing justified by bypassing of normal collaboration step. Here's a scenario for urgently. The QA team reported a critical defect in production just before a regulatory audit. The PM was asked to urgently arrange the fix with minimal downtime. Mindset insight. Urgently suggests high risk and possibly regulatory or compliance implications. The PM must prioritize speed while balancing risk and quality. Here is a scenario for soon. A key stakeholder has just joined the project, and the question says you need to engage with them soon. Mindset insight. Soon doesn't mean right now, it signals that the action must happen in a timely manner. The best answer would likely involve planning a stakeholder meeting or updating the stakeholder register in the near term. Here's a scenario for next. A deliverable has been just approved by the customer. What should the project manager do next? Mindset insight. Next request identifying the logical sequential step in the project management process, likely something in the monitoring or controlling or closing phase depends on the context. It is a test of procedural flow and order. Here is a scenario for later. A team member raises a suggestion for improving process efficiency, but the project is in a critical execution phase. The PM decided to address it later during a lessons learned session. Mindset insight. Later implies that the action is not urgent or is being deprioritized, which may be correct if the current focus on the project delivery. It's a test of prioritization and timing. When reading PMP exam questions, pay close attention to these timing words. They are clues that often point to correct process group, urgency level, or mindset. Misinterpreting them may lead to choosing an inappropriate action like reacting too soon, delaying unnecessarily, or bypassing key steps. I hope you're clear with this mindset. Now, the next mindset we're going to discuss is to solve a problem, you must first identify its root cause. Do not take action without understanding the root cause. There is a saying any problem with an assignable cause can be solved. Also, you cannot solve a problem without knowing its cause. So, when you see a problem present in a PMP exam question, you must first find the root cause before attempting to solve it. Typically, the scenarios will ask, what would you do next after presenting a problem statement? Your first step should be to evaluate the situation and identify the root cause of the problem. Most of the time, when you encounter project issues, for example, after performing a performance evaluation, you might identify some variance or forecast analysis might show that future project performance may decline. You must begin by identifying the root cause before applying a solution. For example, after performing earned value management analysis, suppose the cost performance of the project, that is CPI, is zero point 0.8. It's clear that cost performance is poor since the cost performance index is below 1. To resolve this, you must determine why the cost performance is poor. Perhaps it's due to quality issues leading to rework, or perhaps more resources are being used than planned, or team members are working overtime, resulting in higher project expenses. So don't rush to solve the problem. Always identify the root cause first. If the exam question already stated the root cause, then you can confidently choose the option that addresses the problem based on the stated cause. I hope you're clear with this mindset. The next mindset we're going to discuss is team performance matters more than individual performance. Project succeeds because teams collaborate, communicate, and work together smoothly. Prioritizing team performance boosts productivity, morale, and overall project outcomes. A project manager should foster cooperation, trust, and shared goals. It is about creating an environment where everyone's strength complements one another, not about competing for individual glory. Take cricket, for example. If a batsman plays only to score a century, using up too many balls, the team may run out of opportunities to win. But if he plays to maximize the team's run efficiently, the team benefits and he might still hit a century as a bonus. The team success often brings individual success, not the other way around. So, how do we promote team performance over individual performance? The answer is simple: set team goals and build shared understanding. This encourages team members to prioritize collective success over personal achievements. Always keep people in shared commitment mode, not individual accomplishment mode. That's the key. For this reason, we always recommend setting team goals, measuring team performance, and rewarding team achievements, not individual performance. For example, in Agile, we measure team velocity, which reflects how much work the entire team completes in an iteration. It's not about how much work each individual finishes. If you start measuring individual contributions, it creates unhealthy competition and people being focusing on personal credit rather than team success, which ultimately harms collaboration results. So always set team goals, measure team performance, and reward the team as a whole. Avoid doing this at the individual level because it can kill the spirit of the teamwork. In the PMP exam, always prefer options that favor team success and performance over individual accomplishment or rewards. The next mindset is baselines require change control in predictive. Agile doesn't use them. In predictive, that is waterfall style projects, baselines like scope, time, and cost baselines are the reference points for measuring project performance. You cannot just tweak them on the fly. Any change must go through the formal change control process. But in Agile, we don't lock down baselines. Instead, we embrace flexibility. Requirements evolve and plans adapt. As a PM in Predictive, your role includes protecting baselines. If someone asks to add a feature or change a milestone date, you log a change request, evaluate the impact, and get it approved. In Agile, your focus is more on product backlog prioritization, iteration planning, and continuous feedback, not baseline protection. So, in Predictive, guard your baselines like treasure and use change control. In Agile, no baseline, just the backlog and adaptation. The next mindset is in Agile, there is no change control board or perform integrated change control process. The product owner owns change management. In predictive projects, we use perform integrated change control process, the change control board, to assess and approve and manage changes. Everything is formal here. Everything is documented. But Agile, we don't have the CCBs or formal change control process. Instead, the product owner handles change by managing and reordering the product backlog based on stakeholder feedback and business value. It's dynamic and fast, built for change, not to resist it. In Agile, there is no change form, no perform integrated change control procedure, no CCB, and no change control software. It's just the product owner. Remember this. So in the exam, if you see any question from Agile, and if you see any options related to perform integrated change control procedure or having a CCB reviewing the change request, then definitely those options are invalid. You can eliminate them. The next mindset is in Agile, Scrum Master or the PM will take care of people and process, whereas a product owner is responsible for the product and economics. Scrum Master or the Agile project manager, they own the people and process. The job is to build a high performing team, coach them, remove roadblockers, and make sure Agile practices are being followed. Product owner, they own the product and the money. They manage the backlog, define priorities, make tough scope calls, and ensure that every sprint delivers business value. Think ROI, not team dynamics. Why it helps on the PMP exam? The PMP exam questions will often give you a role and ask what that person would do. If the question is about team conflicts, process gaps, coaching, or agile ceremonies, think Scrum Master or PM. If it's about backlog, feature prioritization, budget trade offs, or stakeholder value, think product owner. With that, we are done with all the 28 critical PMP exam mindsets you need to know for passing the PMP exam effortlessly. But here's a word of caution. There are many influences out there convincing that mindset alone is enough to pass the PMP exam. This is not real. At least from my point of view, this is not real. So I would definitely urge you to master the project management fundamentals, tools and techniques and methods. You won't be able to pass the exam with mindset alone, period. If you want to master project management concepts effortlessly in a brain friendly way, then I have an excellent resource for you. I've provided the link to my Udemy course in the description. Check it out. It will make your learning process so easy. I'm sure you would have liked this video. If so, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much. Also, if you're part of any learning community, please share this video link in your community so others can also benefit from it. I will meet you again with another useful video. My best wishes for your PMP exam success.